Hey everybody. Whoa. I was actually trying to do usually I do these on my phone. I have a new setup on the computer as I start to kind of get the home studio situation slightly more together. Um, and the preview was just hanging. I could not get it going. I actually think it was a problem on the YouTube end. So I'm apologizing. I'm here on the video on the phone. Hey, can everybody hear me? Can everybody hear me pretty well? I was hoping to use my computer and get the new setup going, but it looks like yeah we have to do a phone one, which is no problem. There's some stuff I want to get to. There's just so many moving pieces here. And I want to kind of start and obviously look out of the gate. If you can, if you're able, this is a really important time and a really great time to go to patreon.com/TMBS and and become a patron. It's essential, and we will give anybody a deal. Obviously, we don't turn anybody away. We just obviously have to pay our bills and keep everybody going. So go to patreon.com/TMBS. Pre-order my book, Against the Web, the Cosmopolitan Case Against the Cosmopolitan Answer to the New Right. You can get that at Red Emma's, which is an awesome independent bookseller in Baltimore. You can also get it at Amazon if you insist. And while you're doing this, smash the like button if you haven't yet. Click subscribe. Check out our video library. We've got a ton of the back catalog and a huge amount of Patreon content, of course. Um, and while I'm doing this, hit us with the super chats. That's really important for the channel. And I'll try to get to your chat questions and impression requests. But guys, it's hurtling through. And I'm really going to strongly encourage you to call your members of Congress tomorrow, people in the House, your congressional representatives, and say that they absolutely need to reject the Senate bailout bill. Be really polite, be really concise. This bill gives away trillions of dollars to corporate America without any accountability. You don't feel comfortable with hundreds of billions of dollars being under the purview of Steve Mnuchin. You don't trust him. You also recognize that there's no guarantees that companies can, I believe it's 6 months, 4 to 6 months, take uh, uh, keep people can you can only fire 10% of the workforce. That's already an incredibly high number, and then there's no restrictions on that afterwards. So it's really, really, really important to go there, and then of course say what really needs to happen. The Boost Act, the great bill that Rashida Tlaib put forward, with $2,000 a month for a year for every single person in this country, including, of course, undocumented people, in a prepaid card. There also needs to be work on rent suspension and other crucial measures. But what just got passed out of the Senate is absolutely disaster capitalism. And they are taking an opportunity. They are taking a global recession and a massive public health crisis to try to accelerate aggressively the next wave of monopoly capitalism, that we're going to get to a place where we have a handful of monopoly platforms that control our economic lives. And that stifles labor, it stifles worker cooperatives, it stifles small business. And of course, it's a nightmare for workers and for people, but and democracy. So we need to do everything we can to fight this. An alternative is really simple: pump a huge amount of money directly to small businesses. As I say, give everybody a 2,000 or 3,000 a month UBI, suspend rent, suspend mortgages. Uh, Ireland just implemented national health care. Spain nationalized their hospitals. We need, at the bare minimum, if we're talking in politically realistic terms, some type of Medicare for all for corona coverage. Of course, we ultimately need, Medicare for all. So radically expand food stamp benefits, make unemployment 100% of salary, and then when you do a buyback, demand card check, no stock buybacks, and corporate board seats where at least half of the corporate board seats are workers. So there's a ton of options here. There's an unbelievable amount of great ideas. You can just read Matt Brunig's excellent summary of what countries like Denmark are doing that actually work. The answers are here. The reason we're not implementing the answers is because we live in a profoundly rotted, corrupted system, and we need to choose whether or not we're going to keep moving and evolving as a country and as a species, or we're going to allow capitalism and a national security state along with it to consume us all. So it's really important, really, 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 really important to fight against this and encourage everybody in Congress who's fighting against this monstrosity. Um, and then I also, yeah, please, absolutely smash the like button, hit subscribe. Don't sit on the sidelines. You look at someone like Tulsi, she gets involved. And that's what you need to do with the Michael Brooks Show YouTube channel. You need to get involved. What's up to Algeria? Um, it's not getting a lot of press, obviously, for a variety of reasons, but I want to talk about a little bit of a global update. The United States has been waging a relentless economic and diplomatic war against Iran. And it's meant that as soon as Donald Trump tore up the Iran deal, which was working, which the Iranians were observing every condition of every aspect of their deal, no one questioned that, not the United States, not the International Energy Agency, and not our European partners. Nobody questioned it. Iran observed the terms of the nuclear deal. Nobody disputes that. Donald Trump tore up that bill in 2017 and went into a new round of economic warfare, which has already had such a huge damaging effect on the Iranian population. We're talking about not being able to buy medicine. We're talking about not being able to upgrade jet fleets, which makes air travel enormously dangerous. We're doing this through incredibly brutal mechanisms, essentially excluding Iran from a lot of international financial mechanisms. So, even just the ability of, as an example, European trading partners who obviously want to trade with Iran and observe the enormous success and huge diplomatic breakthrough of the Iran deal, were not able to because of international currency restrictions. Now add Corona. Corona is ripping through Iran. It's killing a lot of people. And of course, these psychopaths and ghouls like Mike Pompeo and the editorial page of the Wall Street Journal and Eli Lake, and various other profoundly sick, twisted people see this as an opportunity to press strategic advantage on Iran. And we can absolutely say this is quite literally a genocidal action. This is a genocidal policy. A great piece in the American Conservative by Daniel Larson. He just said, basically stop calling them Iran hawks, call them Iran ghouls. Juan Cole at Informed Comment has an excellent piece on this. Obviously, most of Congress is silent. Bernie Sanders, a couple of days ago, called for lifting them. And of course, he was the only member of the Democratic caucus in the Senate to vote against Iran sanctions in 2017. As with everything else, Bernie stands alone. And thank you, Bernie Sanders. Keep running hard for president. We need you. AOC has called for an end to them, and there's some movement on this. People are spearheading it, but this can't get lost. Obviously, first and foremost is killing this bailout. But people need to say, we object completely and utterly to a genocidal policy aimed at Iran. It's absolutely disgusting and unacceptable, and we need to reject U.S. policy in that regard. We needed to reject the initial policy completely, and we need to reject it entirely as it manifests in the context of Corona. It's absolutely wrong, and we need to completely and fully reject it and demand that there's action on this in Congress. And it does not matter what the domestic dynamics in Iran are. It does not matter at all. It matters our role in spreading this virus through Iran, which is killing a lot of people. And the fact that people see this as a potential strategic advantage is absolutely sick, disgusting, and unacceptable. All right, I got to get to Bolivia and the OAE. Mike is much better. Thanks. Left is best. Ben Shapiro says that fascism is left wing and that anarchism is right wing. He said that left wing means more government and right wing means less government. Is that correct? Will you debate him? I mean, I guess I think debates like that are kind of boring and useless. Typically, what you would do is you would actually break up two different grids. So there's a more kind of theoretically more sort of interventionist. There's authoritarian right, which wants to both sort of use government to control personal behavior, but maybe valorize markets. There's supposedly a more kind of authoritarian left, which is more likely to kind of again maybe have more to say about personal behaviors, right? And then supposedly each wing of the political tradition has of each political tradition has libertarian wings. We know market fundamentalist libertarians who want the market to do whatever it pleases, but also will advocate for decriminalizing drugs, as an example. And then there is the anarchist tradition. It's actually pretty hysterical. The anarchist tradition classically is absolutely of the left because, just to put it in really simple terms, the anarchist tradition is saying that it's not just the state that is a threat to liberty. It's private enterprise. Property is theft is a foundational statement of anarchist philosophy. So it sounds heady and impressive, but as typically with Ben Shapiro, it is not. Are you aware of the Justice Department attempt to pre-arrest Rolling Stone article? Well, I talked about this yesterday. This is another thing I've actually been tweeting and talking a lot about it. Absolutely. And thanks for reminding me. Guys, this is another thing. You need to demand that Congress do not allow the DOJ recommended rule changes under Bill Barr, which would in fact allow judges to have emergency powers in a situation like now to not give people trials, hold them with indefinite detention. This is apartheid shit, and it needs to be thoroughly and completely rejected. Absolute credit to Mike Lee, ultra far right libertarian, good example actually, senator from Utah. He said, "Over my dead body." All props to him on this issue, of course, and we need to demand that that not happen. That's incredibly dangerous and overtly authoritarian. Landlords screaming on Reddit. More rent strikes. Absolutely. Talk with your neighbors, coordinate with your people, and let's also start to look and think about how we can support people. People are going on strike. It's incredible. It's the most inspiring thing happening. Purdue workers are striking. Pittsburgh sanitation workers are striking. Reports from Amazon houses, Domino's Pizza. People are doing this. It's necessity. It's enormously dangerous. It takes a huge amount of courage, and we need to support them. This moment is scary as hell, and they're trying, Democrats and Republicans, led by Republicans, to rob us, and it's terrifying. At the same time, there is enormous possibility, and we don't want to go back to normal because normal was sick. Normal was destroying the planet. Normal is not working for most people, to say the least. After voting for Biden, about voting for Biden or not, your thoughts on starting a mass petition that says progressives won't vote for Biden unless he improves his platform. Well, I've floated this idea, and I actually would say no. If you do it, it's not about improving the platform. It's about picking a vice president. I've named Nina Turner as an example. Some people, for some reason, think that it can't be her. I've never gotten a satisfactory answer as to why. It could certainly be her, but there's also other. Obviously, there's big no's. Not Elizabeth Warren, not Stacey Abrams, not Kamala Harris, not Amy Klobuchar. But I think we could come up with a list. It has to be about specific staffing. And on the flip side, no Mike Bloomberg, no Jamie Dimon. When you have a second, could you comment on progressive media lack of unity? I also follow Tim Black, Kyle, and others. Without uniting, you'll continue to have a hard time increasing audience mass. Well, I mean, we are. We help each other. We do each other's shows, and honestly, The next wave, I mean, everything we're doing is really important. I think it does play a really big role. But the next wave, in terms of scaling an audience, doesn't have anything to do with us uniting. It has to do with, is there ever a plausible strategy um, to get on larger media platforms? Until now, we just have to keep um, doing what we're doing, and you all have to spread it. That's really, really, really the kind of path, right? Like there's no like magic bullet, because uniting just replicates audience. We definitely, and we do, we go on each other's platforms. As an example, Kyle's great, Tim Black I really like, David Dole. There's tons of people, Benjamin Dixon. There's tons of people out there. Not to mention, of course, like Jacobin, and all the amazing people that, Anna Kasparian, or, Milton Alamati. I mean, anybody that I have on my show, obviously I want you to be reading, following, and supporting if you can. So it's going to continue to grow organically. Crystal ball, it's going to continue to grow organically. And the next stages of how it actually scales are going to generate a whole different set of questions. So what happens when the systems finish stealing what little is left? The economy feels about as real as the Soviet economy. The government is just pumping money into its surrogates and friends. I think that that analogy is not far off. I think we are totally running out of steam. And we are in an incredible horizon right now where we have the ideas, we have a lot of the right instincts. The left totally doesn't have institutional power, and it's got serious internal weaknesses, and it needs to totally reconceptualize how it builds a mass movement and how it gets rid of its own foolish tendencies. But there is a huge amount of opportunity right now. There's a huge amount of opportunity. As scary and as fucked up as it is, there's profound opportunity. What historical event does a rent strike remind Chris Matthews of? It kind of reminds me of, this is like the Battle of the Bulge, except the Nazis have won. The Nazis have won. It's an alternative history, and the Nazis have won. They called up, they said, we're still trying to get rent from the old lady downstairs who has emphysema. And we said, it's over. It's over. She's gone on rent strike. She's not going to pay her rent. It's really kind of like the end of Casablanca. It's the end of, sort of like the end of True Detective. I mean, did the case really get solved? Did you ever watch Coming to America? Just spitballing now. What else would it be? I mean, I guess the really obvious one would be like, this is the Red Army. This is Stalin. And I had a certain attitude about Castro because at Holy Cross, I was trying to impress a girl. She was related to Batista. She was a hot, foxy Cuban girl. She was totally fine. And I was trying to impress her by talking about how bad Castro was. And, it didn't necessarily work. But, I learned in that sense that he was a dictator who didn't like America. And I have a certain attitude about this. And I think, Bernie might have killed me. He might have killed the hot girl who was related to Batista. So ridiculous. Um, all right, guys. Look, as we know, last fall there was a coup in Bolivia. It removed illegitimately and undemocratically and illegally. Okay, all right. Let me just do this real quick. Keep going with the super chats, and I'll weave in and out of Bolivia. I do want to talk about Bolivia and the OAS. It's really important. For the Nazis to have won, they would have had success at Stalingrad or Kursk. Winning the Battle of the Bulge would have just brought them 3 months. Well, thank you. I'm just trying to fit this into a Matthews impression, bro. But good point. Solid history. There was a coup in Bolivia several months ago, and the first wave, as always, with a bunch of concern trolling and nonsense about calling it what it obviously was. Have James Domian on for Julian Chris Matthews. I'm open to it. That could be fun. That might actually be a fun idea. I'll look into it. And we all knew from the beginning. I reported it was really obvious. Basically, the vote count was paused for a minute. It was going to be finished the next day. Morales had a lead, and it was sort of like, again, if you just watch CNN and it's like, okay, um, you know, one particular candidate has a 7-point lead, but we're going to predict that this candidate is going to win by, say, 12 points because we know that the rest of the districts coming in are favorable to that candidate. It's the precise dynamic of what just happened in Bolivia, and it's no surprise. At the end of the day, Morales was very popular. He lifted a huge amount of people out of poverty. He had a hugely successful economy. There was huge advances for rights and openness of indigenous people. And of course, as was always the case in these places, to the extent there is any legitimate critique, those critiques come from the left, not the fascistic coup elements um, that would basically. What is the difference between leftism and collectivism? I don't know. That's kind of a wonky question. Um, Again, these questions, like, what do you mean by collectivism? What do you mean by leftism? It depends on what area we're talking about. There's left impulses to give people an enormous amount of openness and space in certain areas of their lives. There's other areas where there needs to be a collective effort. So, it just doesn't necessarily clarify that much. Can you do a Steve Mnuchin impression? Okay, this is so what we're gonna do. My Chris Matthews has totally polluted my Mnuchin. Yeah, okay, okay. Is that no chin? Actually, Bill Maher had a great line about Steve Mnuchin. Bill Maher said that Steve Mnuchin looks like what women who work at strip clubs think all men look like, which I thought was pretty funny. Um, so there's this coup. The Organization of American States is a key factor in that coup. They're the ones who call into question the legitimacy of the election, even though there's no basis for it, and Morales is the obvious winner. Could I elaborate on Rashida's idea of giving undocumented immigrants 2K a month as well? I mean, she would give them 2K a month. I don't. I guess I'm a little confused by the question. I don't understand. They would be included in the plan, so they would also get sent this prepaid card. I guess if you mean like how it would be sent to people who might have an undocumented status, that I don't know logistically. I just know that legally that bill would cover every single person. So I think it would include undocumented folks, um, anybody in U.S. territory. So basically, the Organization of American States is the one that comes out and says and questions the legitimacy of the Bolivian election results with zero basis. And the OAS historically in 2010, they helped the Obama administration in a regime change effort, essentially a regime change in Haiti. They overturned an election with scant evidence and replaced it with a more pliant regime. They helped back Hillary Clinton's work to solidify the coup in Honduras against Manuel Zelaya in 2009. And historically, even though they're supposed to kind of function as almost like a United Nations of Latin America in some respects, they definitely have been a tool and implement and a tool and influence of U.S. foreign policy, which has obviously meant endless coups and to this day endless coups, attempts at coups, and policing of U.S. corporate and military interests in Latin America and the Caribbean. Now, the current head of the OAS, Almagro, I just want to say really briefly, there was a great piece that Branko Marcic wrote in these times, which you should look up, where he talked about how Almagro is this chameleon-like figure who actually served, and this is tragedy because he was Pepe Mujica's foreign minister. Pepe Mujica was president of Uruguay, a fantastic president, one of the most inspiring figures we have in the world today. I would strongly recommend you watch Pepe Mujica, Life Supreme. It's a great documentary, just hanging out with him on Netflix. It's inspiring and beautiful and an exact antidote to all of the poison you see in Western capitals today. But Almagro had a political career of shifting alliances to the right and to the left and with various changes along the way to advance his own power. And in his role as the OAS, he has firmly gotten himself back, really into a hard right position, where not only did he involve himself actively in the Bolivia coup, he's been aggressively waging efforts at coup in Venezuela, supporting U.S. efforts at a coup in Venezuela, and even meeting with far right leaders in Spain. So let's see. I missed a few of these. Your thoughts on the video of Lawrence O'Donnell where he said, in order to influence a political party, you must be shown you're capable of not voting for them. Well, I think that that is totally true. And I also think there needs to be a strategic context. If it's a bunch of just random people not voting for it, that doesn't do a damn thing. That's why I've talked about this petition idea. How about your best Sagar impression? Like Sagar and Jetty, my buddy over at the Hill. I've never done an impression of him before. Uh, that's why we got to talk about China, Crystal. I don't know. I have to work on it. We need to hit the streets when the pandemic dies down. Yes, don't get used to this isolation mindset. The left needs to take back the original idea of the Run Road doctrine, an original mechanism against European interfering in revolutions. Well, no, that is somewhat true, but that is also that's like a really over. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's still actually setting up a U.S. sphere of influence of in Latin America, and basically saying that it's going to be sort of like its its hegemonic zone. So I have a problem with that. Impression: Nation of Islam. Obama advises Trump on how to handle Corona. I love it. The only thing is that I actually heard that white people have stronger immune systems. So absolutely, we need to get back to work. We need to go out, and you devils need to celebrate Easter without a doubt. But just make it very, very clear that it's going to be white people who go out and celebrate. That's the key thing. I caught that super chat. I think, again, those questions are boring. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I'm not interested in sort of, you know, that sort of, okay, that's a bummer. I'm too bad. I'm sorry to hear that. It's not, guys, like we've got a globe melting right now. We're dealing with like really serious shit. So my answer to that question is like tap into the serious shit. Impression: Britney Spears supporting a general strike. Uh, I cannot do an impression of that. I don't even remember what Britney Spears sounds like. But what's awesome is I read that Britney Spears, not only did she put out that cool statement, but she actually was really talking. I think she was talking about helping people get diapers for their kids or something. It was something like so grounded and so real. She's cool, man. It's fucking great. H.W. Brand's Bio FDR trailer to his class. I've been rereading it in the Slutzinger FDR trilogy. Amazing. Also, do you have a Bush the second impression? I used to. It was decent. I was kind of just like, well, we're gonna defeat the coronavirus, and coronavirus. They didn't know what they did when they got in our doorknobs. It's a very retro feeling. Got any Larry Kudlow in you tonight? He climbed out of the woodwork yesterday at the briefing. And thank you, Wander and Wonder. What I really caught about the Larry Kudlow sound was he really did seem like he was sort of like being like, all right, it says we're pulling off a huge fucking robbery. So this is a serious day. I only drank beer. I rob the treasury better when I'm drunk. And so we did that, and we got we did that, and now we're gonna take it, and it's gonna be all for the Main Street. But I am serious, am ready, and I am in a positive mind state. Uh, John Stewart should have endorsed Bernie, definitely. Why aren't there more musicians giving us anti-establishment political music throughout this presidency? The Bush era gave us amazing counterculture brands. P.S. Just became a patron last night. Jake, thank you so much. I don't know. I think culture reacts in different ways at different historical moments, and we can't look to replicate things no matter how great they were. So I think part of the problem, I mean, it's also like Trump is so ridiculous and so psychopathic. It's like, what do you, where, even in music, I mean, I'm thinking primarily in terms of comedy, but it's like, where is the absurdity to pull out from? The left needs to focus on ending nationalism and capitalism and focus on international and socialism. Will you cover Eurasianism? I would look more into Eurasianism, although we need to keep it real. There needs to be, again, the fusion of global interdependence, national social democracy, and local resiliency. I think multipolarity is obviously important. Look at the conversation and watch I had with Pepe Escobar, and there certainly will be a lot more, hopefully, non dogmatic and really thoughtful conversations about China, but also conversations on ecology and resiliency on this show as well. Michael, you've been traveling a lot. Are you going crazy being stuck at the house? Yes. I really miss it. I love doing the live shows. I love going different places. Um, yeah, I do. But there's also, there's something very grounding and very positive. And again, if you have the ability, if you're in a position, this is really fucking stressful for all of us, but if you have any sort of position where you can, do some exercise, meditate, think about what you're grateful for in life, even if it's virtually, connect with people you care about. I think about getting a dog. I'm still just scared about, when travel and other things, but at some point I got to get a dog. I love dogs so much. I'm a Marxist. Liberals at law school have thought I'm right wing because I'm not PC, and it's really confusing. How can we go forward with this divide? Look, I think ultimately what the real lesson here is we have to figure out what a broad national message is. The bridge is not going to be with the PMC liberal class. It's going to have to be with a broad set of people that, in what I think some people will experience to be a much more moderate way, but have serious bedrock commitments to the rights and dignity of all, and then have a serious argument and persuasion that isn't filled with a lot of jargon and alienating about shared material interests. And it's definitely, and it's not going to be about people's, it's not going to be monitoring their every speech, their every behavior, their every belief. It's going to have to be much more broadly tolerant in the largest sense. So I think that that's what you're encountering. It really is a different political trajectory. And our trajectory ends with democratizing of all life and a serious, nationalizing of strategic industries, a serious global solidarity, a serious rooting in international aspirations that have roots in every single culture. And, I think that that is where we're going to go. And I think what you're experiencing makes a lot of sense because, the kind of end road of sort of affluent liberalism is, it's the I will no longer fight for apartheid because I must engage in extensive self care. Steve Biko was very rude to me, and I expected ANC leadership. Govan and Becky had snake emojis, and I will no longer fight apartheid. Have you read Talib Kweli's article, Why ADOS is trashed, exposed it as white nationalist movement, got picked up by black people to be anti-immigrant, pro-Trump? I haven't read it. I don't know a lot about that movement, to be honest, but I have seen I don't know if it covers the whole movement. I know there's certain tendencies that I've seen absolutely that overlap with anti-immigrant and real division between African Americans and Latino people. I've definitely seen that. And that's a bigger. I mean, there's a lot of sinister stuff behind that. Just read the book Manufacturing Consent. Thoughts? It's a very good book. I think the Noam Chomsky model holds up, particularly in the press warfare against Bernie, in the press warfare of manufacturing consent for disaster capitalism right now, even as we could have obvious democratic socialist social democratic solutions right in front of us. I did a video about Noam Chomsky and the coverage of Bernie earlier in the summer, which you might enjoy. I love this show. Your Kudlow impression is the best thing, is the only thing that makes me laugh these days. I live in Wyoming. Well, oh, solidarity with Wyoming, much love. And let me just say, like, Wyoming would be a great place to travel because you can't get corona in the mountains. Now, for God's sake, use Perel. Wash your hands. Don't go, don't walk around. But if you want to go to Wyoming and take a horseback ride, that's my dad, my pie oh my. But anyways, we got a great economy. We've got the highest rate of Dominicans who are accountants in American history. We've got so much coming, and it's only going to get better and better. And Wyoming would be a place to do it. So, for God's sake, to protect yourself from corona, drink a lot of vodka, have a lot of tequila. Just do that. And it's not going to be beer. It's not going to be beer. You got to drink real, actual alcohol. It's the only way that kills the bacteria. And you could do that in Wyoming. And that's why the economy is going strong. Don't even worry about it. I'm sorry. I can definitely get into doing the Cudlow. Um, on Friday, I'm going to be doing a conversation with Doug Lane for Zero Books on my book, Against the Web, Cosmopolitan Answer to the New Right. I'm really excited about it. I'm also going to do a bunch of videos on the book in the coming weeks, of course, on this channel. And also on Friday, I'm going to also be a guest on Navarre Media. Tomorrow, I'm going to be on the second half of Majority Report. For patrons of TMBS, we have a two-part series on never letting any part of a crisis go to waste, a practical roadmap with my great friend Joshua Kahn Russell, who's just amazing. I'm so happy. I mean, just these amazing human beings. Alona Minkowski, Adolf Reed. I mean, it's awesome. And so that's going to be a two-part for patrons. Conversations coming up with Shahid Buttar on the failure of Pelosi and protecting our civil liberties. That goes back to the Bill Barr question. It's going to be on Saturday. And an illicit history on a new kind of brief series on African revolutionaries, and then another brief series on Obama and the financial crisis, what happened in 2008. So there's a ton, and there's already, I mean, literally hundreds of extra pieces of Patreon content. If you are in quarantine and have the means, there is a whole global political education for you there. You convinced me. Larry Kudlow sounds like a drunk Stark in a Bugs Bunny cartoon who brought people the wrong babies. Also, is your Sam Cedar impression based on D.F. Swidler in the comic strip? I don't understand the first reference, but Sam's impression owes something to Saul Rosenberg, which is a classical Jerky Boys prank character, which is the God damn it. Although Saul was a lot more kind of hapless in a way. I mean, the Sam character is hapless, but there's a lot of good rage. There's a lot of like, there's no my paper because I can't. God damn it! Fuck! I want him to be okay. Pepe Escobar is a Duganist, Eurasianist. He works with Dugan. We are heading a polycentric world, not multipolarity. Stay away from Duganists. Well, yes, absolutely. I mean, look, I definitely have disagreements with Pepe Escobar, but I think he's brilliant. I think he's interesting, and I think it's worth tuning into him. But I certainly have some disagreements with him, and I don't know though. I have never heard that he's a Duganist before. I'm certainly not interested in that tendency at all. But I haven't heard that. He certainly has a huge amount of sympathy for China and Russia, and I think people need to at least understand that perspective. They need to grok it. We're living in an emergent multipolar world. How likely is it Trump reopens the country on Easter? I have no effing idea. And a lot of that is in the power of the states. I think he's going to encourage a lot of people to a lot of really reckless, horrific behavior. But ultimately, it's the Lloyd Blankfein tweet with the same message essentially is equally as terrifying. How come you never go and get on Bob's Burgers? We should ask them. I think it's a goddamn good question. Uh, Neoliberalism inspires myopia and individualism. Of course, people are blaming rule breaking spring breakers for the outbreak. We need central planning. Yeah, absolutely. And look, some people obviously have been assholes and disregarded people's health, but there's a lot of other people being like, "Oh, I was noticing the photos in Britain, and actually no, they did a good segment on this on Navarra of like, oh, we're blaming flower sellers for being out selling flowers. Well, what the hell are they supposed to do? The government hasn't done anything for them. What are your thoughts about running for office? I'd love to see you and Ilhan tag team leftist geopolitical legislation. Well, that is an incredible, huge honor and compliment. In some ways, it seems like something that would be incredibly unfun, to be honest. But you know, I'm really focused on what's right in front of me. But that's a total honor to even see that, and I think all of us, in every way, shape, and form, really do need to be thinking towards power. So that's something to, in every way, shape, and form, be serious and think about. Um, so I don't think I missed any. I think I answered your questions. So at any rate, folks, I mean, I think I actually did answer all of those. A super chat question does not mean a answer that you will like necessarily. But at any rate, let's do better here. Guys, Iran, um, Bolivia. These are really important things to keep track of. We need to see the OAS role in the Bolivia coup, which I'm sure, of course, traces back to the United States. Evo Morales, the rightful president of Bolivia, is still obviously in exile. And there's extraordinary organizing going against this fascistic regime in Bolivia right now. We're going to talk about it more on the show. We need, wait, he asked about anti blackness. I completely missed that. Um, I totally missed that. He's an exiled in Argentina. So I would just say, though, beyond that, demand that people, and is that really what I did totally miss that question. Um, well, if that was the question, I would say read Class Notes by Adolf Reed, where he rejects the conservative narratives, and any narratives, frankly, whether they're coming from the left, the liberal, or the conservative, that prioritize culture and individuality over systemic drivers of poverty. And that's true in racist narratives, and it's also true in a lot of the new kind of trendy liberal discourses that supposedly explain middle America. Thoughts on the ICC investigating war crimes during the Afghan-U.S. war? I think that's great. It should be. It should be. But so I would say that I think that's really important, and implicit in that critique, Alex, is a critique of Afro-pessimism because he is historicizing it. But I don't know. I would need to read more myself. But I really will always just say, Adolf Reed's the best in the game. Read Adolf Reed if you want a serious understanding of these sort of things. Um, Let your representatives also know lifting sanctions on Iran is a must. Genocide on the Iranian people is absolutely unacceptable. We need to kill this bill. We need to kill this bill and need to call your representatives and demand that they do it. Guys, huge amount of work. We're doing a lot of extra content. I think we're actually going to unlock a post game for next week, and also the second part of our conversation with Shreko Harvard. If you're watching this and you haven't seen the conversation with Shreko Harvard on YouTube, I go over there and watch that immediately. I think that was a really good one. If you're new to the channel, go in the archives. Watch the interview I did with the guys from Brazil Wire, President Lula. There's so much there that we need to learn from and implement. And all of the conversations with Milton Alamati, all of the conversations with Richard Wolff, so many amazing people and so many great things that we generate as a team. We all do it because of you. I'm honored. I appreciate all of you. We're going to keep fighting this bill. We're going to keep fighting for rent suspensions across the country. Much love to all of you. The Isaiah James interview, that's exactly the type of person we need in leadership. I appreciate all of you. Much love. Really, seriously. Much love. Stay safe. Stay healthy. We will fight for each other. It's very scary. It's very fucked up, but there is real possibility here too, and we're going to take it. So let's just keep going. All right, guys. Wait, isn't the Senate voting tonight? And the bill went to the House more with more of the things Dems wanted. Well, I know that the Senate version will go to the House, and Pelosi's trying to rush that through. So again, obviously can't count on Pelosi for anything, and it might be worth continuing to call your senators, but it hasn't passed yet. That's true. Please see data and projections on covidaction.org. I also like the Flattening the Curve site. Guys, really, much love. If you can, stretch out a little bit, take periodic breaks from technology, take these action steps, connect with your neighbors, connect with your friends and family, make these phone calls. They're really important. And there's also going to be tons of other ways. Check out Bad Praxis. There's also going to be tons of other ways that we are going to start engaging and acting in politics. And we're going to have to bring on a much bigger set of people. We're going to have to do this much better. We're going to have to be way more strategic. We're going to have to be more appealing. We're going to have to be more forgiving. We're going to have to get outside of bubbles, but we're also going to win. And I appreciate all of you. Okay? Much love. Hang in there.